Make sure you turn your seats around. This is the time to get comfortable, right? And you don't have to, but if that would be more accommodating, please feel free to move however. Yes, that's right, sister. Move however makes you feel comfortable so that you can participate fully tonight. All right, let's see if I can close. Well, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us for this, what we think is a very important program. It seems like you might too. Thank you for braving the we don't know what kind of weather we're having right now in St. Louis. I suppose that's normal for us nowadays. I also wanted to welcome not those of you, just those of you who came physically, but those of you who are joining us online. We have several people who are also joining us that way. My name is Meredith Rata. I am part of the board of directors for Seeds of Justice Network, and I'm going to be your MC for the evening. Oh, this is the fun part for me. I'm so excited that just to see so many faces here that are so interested in something that is very near and dear to my heart, and I imagine it is to you all as well. So as shown on your programs, I believe you have a program. Our keynote speaker for this evening is Sister Norma Pimentel. We will introduce her in a little bit here. She is the executive director of Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley. She's going to be addressing the call of our faith to understand and respect the dignity of the human person as manifest in the immigrant community. After that, we're going to hear from Jessica Mayo. She's the director of the MICA Project, as well as Chris Walintik, who is the immigration managing attorney of St. Francis Community Services Catholic Legal Assistance Ministry, or affectionately known as CLAM. They're going to address the specific needs and also the services that are provided to the migrant community here in St. Louis. So these talks will be followed by a Q&A session. And then the last part of our program is going to involve each of you exploring your response to what you hear. So we have engagement partners that will be all along the back of the room, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that in a little while. And for those of you attending virtually, and also for those of you who are here tonight, we will be sending out information to you via email afterwards. So if you're not able to connect with a certain person that you wanted to connect with or agency, you'll have that information. So, and you also have an opportunity to buy and support Welcome Neighbor St. Louis and buy boxes of cookies. And I believe they're located over on that side of the room later this evening. Okay, so on your tables are several Q&A cards. Have you found them? Or are you like, what is this? This empty index card? It's a Q&A card. And you also, it looks like a lot of you have pens to write Q&A questions. So throughout the night, you're welcome to jot down your questions. We are going to have individuals that are going to be coming around periodically with baskets so that you may drop those questions in there. If you would think about who you're addressing your question to, if it's to a specific speaker, it would help us if you could write that down. So there's so many of you. We're thinking that some of these questions might overlap. So we're going to gather those questions and then we're going to be reading those closer to the end of the evening as time permits. For those of you who are on Zoom, our board member, Christine Dragonette, is going to be monitoring the chat, and she will also be including your questions as well. And the one last note, some housekeeping, maybe you have not found them yet, but the restrooms, there's 2 sets of restrooms that you're welcome to use. Out those doors, past the registration tables, closer to the front of the building and on your right. Or you could go out those doors back there, make a right, and your restrooms are down to the left. And then also a note at the end of our program, if you need just a little help getting down the stairs, we actually have an elevator. I don't know if you missed it, but there's an elevator out in the lobby, so please feel free to use that elevator as well. All right. Well, now I would like to introduce Father Matt Stewart, who is the principal of St. Louis University High School, to welcome us to their lovely space.
Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces from different parts of my own life. And it's wonderful to be able to welcome you all here on behalf of St. Louis University High School. I'm especially grateful to be able to welcome that the Seeds of Justice group has decided to have your event here tonight. That St. Louis U High would be a place that you could call home for the evening as you discuss something so important and welcome our keynote speaker, Sister Norma. I know that Seeds of Justice is a vital force in our region, promoting Catholic social teaching and the work of justice. At SLU, we are proud that our students encounter what I've heard called the church's best kept secret, Catholic social teaching, in our theology classes and beyond. Our mission here as a Jesuit and Catholic school calls our students to be men for others, as Father Arupe said, rooted in our tradition of faith, justice, and a deep respect for human dignity, the foundation of Catholic social teaching. This commitment shapes how we approach our students and how we form them to be compassionate leaders in a world so in need of healing. Your theme for this evening, human dignity and immigration, is one that is close to our hearts here at SLU. We try to teach our students that these are not simply policy issues or things to think about, but deeply human things. Stories of real people made in the image and likeness of God. In recent years, our school has had the opportunity to send students to go down and work at the U.S.-Mexico border on various immersion trips. And these experiences have allowed our young men to witness the challenges that migrants face, to hear their stories, but most importantly, to encounter them as fellow human beings. These encounters leave lasting impressions upon them and have helped all of us here at this school and with all of you grow in solidarity. This morning, we had the great privilege and pleasure of having Sister Norma speak to a group of our students, telling them about the dignity and humanity of all God's people, and reminded our students, as I'm sure she will again tonight, that to be made in the image and likeness of God means a call to be that image and likeness of God to all people. Once again, it's a great honor to welcome Seeds of Justice and all of you here to St. Louis U High. Thank you for the work that you do every day, that you do to help people encounter Christ in one another. Know of my prayers for your event tonight. Once again, welcome and have a great evening.
Thank you, Father. That is so appropriate because what Seeds of Justice Network says is that, yes, unfortunately, Catholic social teaching is one of the best kept secrets, and that's part of our mission, is to make it not such a secret, right? I also tend to think about some of the agencies and the organizations that are around the room also as secrets, and I am so excited to make all of these things just in plain sight, right, tonight. No more, we're not keeping secrets anymore. Now I'd like to introduce Pat Doherty. He is our Seeds of Justice Network president. So where's Pat? Where are you? There, come on up, Pat. He's going to tell you a little bit more about the purpose of our evening.
Such a great job. I think I'm going to give you my remarks and then you can just read them. Okay. Let us open with prayer. This is a prayer that was used before every session of the Second Vatican Council. We stand before you, Holy Spirit, conscious of our sinfulness, but aware that we gather in your name. Come to us, remain with us, enlighten our hearts. Give us light and strength to know your will, to make it our own, and to live it in our lives. Guide us by your wisdom, support us by your power, for you are God, sharing the glory of the Father and Son. You desire justice for all. Enable us to uphold the rights of others. Do not allow us to be misled by ignorance or corrupted by fear or favor. Unite us to yourself in the bond of love and keep us faithful to all that is true. As we gather in your name, may we temper justice with love so that all our decisions may be pleasing to you and earn the reward promised to good and faithful servants. You live and reign with the Father and Son, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is really heartwarming to see so many people, so many seekers of justice here tonight and on our Zoom. Welcome again. My name is Pat Doherty, as you know, and I have the opportunity to be part of the Board of Directors. I want to give a special thank you again to Father and the leadership of the University of St. Louis U High for the hospitality tonight, and to thank the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet and the Incarnate Word Foundation for their generous support for the programs this evening. Yes. Well, let me take a moment to introduce and have you welcome the Seeds of Justice Board of Directors and Chairs. I especially want to thank Jeff Schullenberg for his leadership and for his team that helped make tonight a reality. And I am happy also to announce this week that we welcomed 2 new board members, Father Jerry Stuckey and Katie Richardson. Would the board rise? If it's raining later, they would be happy to go get your car and bring it up over there. Just that's what board members do. Also want to give a special shout out and thank you to our communications and engagement specialist, Tammy Keniston, and to Rich Haneke, the director of volunteers tonight, and all the volunteers that are out there making this night possible. Thank you to them. Last September, we began our series on the 7 themes of Catholic social teaching with the theme of community, family, and participation. Tonight and continuing all through 2026 and 2027, we are taking a deep dive into the remaining 6 themes with a local focus. Just to let you know that our next program will be this fall, and the focus will be on the theme, the dignity of work and the rights of workers, in September. Stay tuned to our Seeds newsletter for more information. And speaking of our newsletter, if you don't already have the newsletter or get the newsletter, with your permission, we would like to add your name to our list so that you get it and know what's going on in the community on social justice. But if by chance you say, don't need that, just stop by our table afterwards and we'll make sure that that's taken care of. Just a bit about us. We are an independent Catholic nonprofit organization that promotes Catholic social teaching and justice. We seek to engage and equip our neighbors to help build the reign of God, empowering a community that reaches out to those at the margins and the vulnerable, and also those wanting to journey with God's sisters and brothers, seeking the common good, helping each other to love God with all our heart, our soul, our mind, and our strength, and our neighbor as ourselves. We do this by curating social justice programs and networking opportunities, by convening folks to be informed, spiritually fed, and motivated for action for justice, and by lifting up new and existing work in a collaborative fashion. In short, we seek to be transformative, to explore what it means to live out the call to discipleship, and to build the reign of God, both individually and as a community, with all our sisters and our brothers. Let me end with 2 things. We are looking to build our board of directors. And if you are interested in that or some of our committee work, please see us. We have a table here at the very end. Come by and talk with us. We'd be happy to share that about you. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all of you out there who are donors. We are primarily funded by donations, and those of you who would like, we invite every one of you to consider being a donor. There's an envelope in your trifold, and there's the website and our table afterwards. We'd love to talk to you more about it. So, we're glad you're here, you disciples. We are all companions on the journey as we seek to walk humbly, to do justice, and to love mercy. May we all leave inspired and challenged and moved even more to build God's reign with the aid of the Holy Spirit. And now we have a message from Archbishop Rosansky.
Thank you all for committing this time to focus on the dignity of the human person through the lens of Catholic social teaching, particularly as it relates to our immigrant brothers and sisters. I'm sorry that due to a prior commitment, I am unable to be with you in person tonight, but I know you are in good hands. Welcome, Sister Norma, and thank you in advance for sharing your experience and your heart for those in need. While the topic dominates today's headlines, the act of leaving one's home country for a foreign land predates the Church herself. And from her beginnings, the Church has grappled with complexities associated with immigration, while always advocating for the just treatment of those who emigrate. In his 1996 World Migration Day message, St. Pope John Paul II noted, "In the search for a solution, the attitude of the host society has an important role to play. It is very important that public opinion be properly informed about the true situation in the migrants' country of origin, about the tragedies involving them, and the possible risks of returning. The poverty and misfortune with which immigrants are stricken are yet another reason for coming generously to their aid. By being here tonight, you have made a commitment to better understand the migrant experience and to ponder what it means to respond as Christ would, to respond with love. May his peace and his blessings be upon you always. God bless you, and thank you for your presence this evening."
It is now my pleasure to introduce to you a wonderful board member and longtime social justice advocate who will introduce Sister Norma. Please welcome Johnny Zakovich.
As Executive Director of Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley, Sister Norma Pimentel oversees the charitable branch of the Diocese of Brownsville, the second largest Catholic diocese in the United States. She has over 20 years of experience in providing oversight to a diverse set of ministries and social services in the Rio Grande Valley, such as homeless prevention, disaster relief, clinical counseling, pregnancy care, food assistance, and humanitarian relief to immigrants. In 2014, during the influx of immigrants entering the U.S. through the southern border, Sister Norma, with the support of the local community, established the Humanitarian Respite Center, providing a safe space for immigrants to rest before continuing their journey to other parts of the U.S. 10 years later, the Humanitarian Respite Center has become the largest respite center in our country, welcoming over 500,000 immigrants in the course of 10 years. Yeah, I think you should clap for that. Absolutely. More than just providing immediate humanitarian care, Sister Norma has become a voice for immigrant families, reminding us that they are not numbers, but rather human beings who should be respected and treated with dignity. During Advent 2023, thousands of people across the U.S. prayed daily with the words of Sister Norma in a reflection booklet put out by Pax Christi USA. The very first Sunday of Advent, Sister Norma set the challenge before us. Quote, "The social injustices of our time are real. It is the result of an indifferent and detached society that fails to be mindful of God's ways, a God who is inclusive and compassionate and who demands a response from us. God is never indifferent to human suffering. On the contrary, God's presence is revealed in our direct contact with human beings, in our response to human suffering," end quote. In a time crying out for an approach which is both prophetic and powerful, which speaks both truth to power and stands in solidarity with those who are oppressed and marginalized, Sister Norma sets an example for what it means to be God's presence in the face of human suffering. Please join me in welcoming Pope Francis's favorite nun, Sister Norma.
My God. Oh, well, Pope Francis did say, I love you very much. And I'm willing to share that with all my lovely sisters, because I think he loves us all very much, most definitely. And I think he saw a great opportunity to tell me that because he wanted all the sisters to know that what we do is very important, and his message was very clear. He said, have courage, lead, and make a difference, in responding to those that need us, and I think that's what's his message for all of us. And thank you for inviting me, for being here tonight. Wow, look at you, all of you here, and I'm among friends, and I'm among also a lot of holy people, because together we can make a difference to make things better, to respond to what is happening. And it takes us to speak up, to share, to do something about what we're seeing. Early on, when I started very young in my life, religious life, our bishop then, Bishop John Fitzpatrick, asked us, the sisters, to take over a refugee home named Casa Oscar Romero. Is back then when, right after St. Oscar Romero was murdered and assassinated, and a lot of immigrant refugees were coming from El Salvador to the United States, and the whole family was coming, and we welcomed them. We didn't focus on the politics. We didn't focus on what's right and who's wrong. We simply focused on caring for the families that were coming in, just crossing the river and finding our home, that house that the bishop had set up for us to oversee. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families, all wet still from crossing the river. Border Patrol had not stopped them yet, but they found that shelter. And we lived there. Sister Juliana and myself, she was my mentor, my teacher. And I was very young, 24, 25 maybe. And she showed me how to be present, how to welcome these families in the conditions they were coming in. And it was amazing how what we were doing made sense, to be there for them, to have a space where they could be safe. One lady at that time came to our house because I needed to buy a Xerox machine because we were filling out asylum papers for all of them so they could go before the immigration office and get their asylum claims. Believe me, we filled thousands of those applications. So I said, I need copies because I need to make a lot of copies for this, every single application that we filled out. So I call this place downtown, and this lady shows up, beautiful lady with high heels, and very pretty. And she comes in, and the first thing she tells me is, Sister Norma, I am 100% against what you're doing here, helping these illegal aliens. But I'm going to sell you my Xerox machine because I'm a businesswoman, So I told her, thank you for telling me. Let me show you what I do and why. So I had her walk with me to visit the families, the mothers, the children. And as I was walking, I was explaining to her what she was seeing. She turns around and looks at me and she says, "Sister, I am 100% in favor of what you're doing. 100%. She then says, "You're the best salespersons I've ever met. You know, you could be making millions out there." This is where God has me do my millions, you know? I'm sharing my gifts with God's people. That night, I got a call from her husband. She said, "I don't know what you did to my wife, but she came home today and she said, if sister ever calls you, you make sure you do what she asks. So I'm calling you just to let you know that I'm here if you need me." You see, what we do is God's work. He is the one that calls. He's the one that sends us. He's the one that really pulls us forward to make a difference in the lives of those that we care for. But we need to believe that. We need to get up every morning and we need to be able to do it. Because if we really are in contact with God, you cannot just stay and say, mañana or later. It's today, right now. This is when we must move forward, as our Pope very beautifully said. Have courage. Speak up. Be willing to say yes. Be willing to get tired all day and go to sleep tired of doing good. These are his words. Be okay smelling like the sheep. And I smell the sheep here in our center when all these men that come with families after walking for days and weeks, and they take their shoes off. Hundreds of them in one place without having to have a shower or get cleaned up. It smells. It smells like the sheep. I came to understand and to realize that when I smell that, I was embracing God. We have to be willing to get tired, to be out in the sun, in the hot sun that may be 105 degrees, amongst all these immigrants that are out there hoping to enter the United States, waiting for a moment when it's possible to be allowed to enter. I have been accompanied the pastors of shelters that are trying to do their best to try to help these families, whether they're from Central America, from Haiti, from Venezuela, in such big numbers. They're all there looking at you, hurting because barely can give them water. And yet I stand there with them, trying to help them understand, together with the pastor. It says, we're here for you. We're trying to do our best to help you. This is what we must do. Stand with them. Even today, as we see them hurting and suffering in our communities, with all the changes that are happening, and they're hurting, they're afraid, they're scared. They have these faces as if all of a sudden, what is going to happen to me? What is going to happen to our children? The one thing that I've seen in these 10 years that we've been responding with so many families, so many children, so many mothers and fathers that have come to our center every single day, It is their hope that their child, that beautiful face, that beautiful kid that has accompanied them throughout all these days and journey and left their country because of the situation they were faced with back home. I asked the dad, why are you here? Why did you come? And his response will be more than likely, because I have to work for my family. I want to make sure they're okay. Because that's his responsibility as a dad, to make sure their family can be protected. But if you ask the mother, why are you here? She'll turn around and look at her child that's next to her. He's just 8 years old. And she will say, I am here for him. But he's already 8. And he's at the age that they will take him from me. I don't want him to grow up without having the chance to be somebody, to go to school, to be a good person. This is why these families, these parents are coming from so far away for their children. I asked a reporter once, because she was asking me, sister, why is it that these families, these mothers are doing this, bringing their kids like this and putting them in harm's way? I looked at her and I said, are you a mother? And she said, yes. Wouldn't you do anything for your child to make sure your child was safe and okay? And she cried. She started to cry and she said, yes, I would. This is what these parents are doing. They're willing to bring their children, and if they know that if they're at the river and Border Patrol will take them to make sure they're safe, they will tell their child, go, andate. And the child will turn around and look at the mother and says, no, mommy, I want to stay with you. No, mijo, you must go. Because she knew that if she went, her child would be safe, would have a future, would have a chance in life. You know, so many mothers. And the very first mother that I saw when we opened the doors of Sacred Heart to welcome them and to give them a place where they could get cleaned up, the very first one that I saw, that it was almost midnight and I was still there at the center, his mom from Honduras arrived. And so I saw her, and she was a petite mom with a little girl, 3-year-old. And she was pregnant. She's huge. And I asked her, when are you due? And she says, yeah. What do you mean, yeah, now? It's like, how could you come like that? I cannot understand you traveling for days and weeks with a little girl and you so pregnant, you know? And she said, I came for her little girl. And then she shows me her hand. It was all disfigured. And she said, some guys came into our house one day and they tried to kill my little girl with this big knife, machete, you know? And they struck at her. And I put my hand to save her. And they cut it open completely. I didn't have the means or ways of going to a doctor or hospital. So it healed as best as I could make it heal. But if I had stayed, I'm certain my little girl would be dead. So that is why I'm here. Stories like this is stories of what I've heard time and time again. I remember every time at first I would sit down and welcome the families, I would sit down and the very first thing I would ask, ¿Cómo estás? How are you? For the first time in a long time, somebody cared enough to say to them, how are you? I remember this father, big man, was sitting there in front of me. And as soon as I asked him that, he started to cry like a little kid and said to me, fue bien duro. It was so hard to travel through all those days and those places. So hard. It is not easy to get up and leave your country, your home, uproot yourself and leave everything behind, everything that matters, your house, everything you cared about, your culture, and just go. And go to the unknown. Like everybody wants to do that. Like we think, oh, they're coming to invade us. They're coming to destroy us. They're coming for a chance in life. That's all they're looking for. We, the beacon of hope to the world, have always claimed to have the highest values of who we stand for and what we defend. Yet today, we close the doors of our heart and say, you're not welcome. These families who were hopeful that coming here, they would be safe and protected, now find themselves fearful, not knowing what is going to happen to them, especially their children. We're all hearing all that is happening. You know, I saw the movie Oscar Romero in El Salvador. I don't know if you have seen this, but it's a very powerful movie. What really touched me about the movie was seeing Archbishop Romero at the time transformed when he was taken to the slums, to where the families were hurting and suffering. It was not until he got close to them that he was able to understand his calling. And he changed. He understood what he needed to do. And he spoke up. And he said, stop the insanity. Stop killing your own brothers and sisters. I say to you today, we cannot be silent. We cannot continue just not doing anything. We must show what it means to us to have Jesus, to have God in our soul. If we truly find him every day as we welcome him into our life, when we pray, there's only one clear message that I know he has for all of us. And that is to love without discretion, without exception, but everybody, especially the most vulnerable, those that are suffering, those that need us present to them. We must be willing to give it all, get tired doing what we need to do. That is who God is to us. That is our calling. That is what we're called to do. It's very clear that we need to spend time before the Blessed Sacrament, which is something that I find is so important. But I find that it's necessary to do it in silence. So we don't let our own personal emotions, our own personal things get in the way to truly listening to God. What he wants of us, what he needs of you, what he's wanting to tell you. And you will know. I know, because he's very clear in letting me know it every day. Sometimes I think, you must be kidding, huh? One time I had this, it was late at night and my house is very close to the basilica and there's no fence or anything. It's just basically anybody can just walk up to our window and knock. And so sure enough, one night somebody did. And it was late at night and somebody knocked at my window. And I kind of go carefully to see who's on the other side. And there was this black shadow on the other side. I go, oh, my dog jumped too. I decided to get the courage to go outside and open the door and see who it was. It was a young girl. She was dirty and muddy and crying. The guards of the basilica says, go over there. The nun will help you. Really? I said, really, God? I was scared at the moment because I didn't know what to expect. But I got the courage to go and talk to her. And I realized she was a poor soul that was very scared. So I opened the doors and I brought her in and I saw that she needed to take a shower and she hadn't eaten. And the next day I took her to the center and she was fine. But you never know what God asks of us, you know? But anyway, I think that he also gives us the means of how to respond. I think he knows this one will definitely answer her. So let me send her to Sister Norma, you know? Yes, for sure. I think he's asking us all to be willing to say yes. Be willing to take that step, not worried how late it is or what you have to do. If you have that person before you and you know there's something you can do, I think we're called to do it. No ifs or buts, you know? There's a reason why he's calling, and there's somebody that needs you, and so we must say yes. We must do as Pope Francis says, right? He's very clear to us, and he tells us, go to the peripheries. Where are the peripheries? Those people that are here, St. Louis, that are sort of not visible or hiding. Those people that are rejected, that are invisible to the everyday life. We need to make them visible. We need to give them a voice because they too have a voice. Not only speak for them, but help them speak and hear their stories. Introduce them to others so they can meet them and know them. We will not be able to understand this unless we get close enough to see their faces. As Pope Francis also says, know their names, know their stories. And when you do, you will know what to do. Some seminarians sometimes come to the center and say, Sister, I'm going to Reynosa. I don't know what to do, what to say. And I say to them, all you need to do is be present. Be present to them. And God will let you know what you need to do, what you need to say. They need you there present. And they will know if you are or if you're not. You will be able to share with them the love of God that you have with you to offer to them. Just by being present. You sometimes don't even have to say anything. It is how we welcome each other, how we can share ourselves to our family, to our neighbors, to the people that we encounter every day, by sharing God's presence. The way we can do it gently, kindly, in the best way, share that love of how we would love to be treated. Treat others, every single person that we come across. You know, there's one time I remember hearing this story. It was a homeless that was sitting in the sidewalk. People were coming and going, and they were he had a little sign that he was blind and to please help him. And so people would pass by, maybe drop a couple of coins. This lady, as she was passing, she looked at the man, stopped, took the sign, and wrote in the back something else, and put the sign back, and took off. On the way back from work, she stopped there again, and the man noticed it was her, and he asked, "What did you write in my sign? Because after you wrote something in my sign, everybody stopped to give me money." And she wrote, "It's a beautiful day, and I cannot see it." People stopped and connected with this man. We must connect with each other every day. Don't let anybody pass you by without you noticing them, without you saying hello, without you smiling, without you welcoming them with the way you look. This is who we are called to be, to share God. I think this is the only way that we can change what is happening today, by reaching out and showing the world that this is the only way to be. If we believe in God, we then must live out God in the best way we can, loving others with kindness and gentleness, tenderness. These are the words of Pope Francis too. This is the only way to do it. We can model this. We can bring out the best in each other. We certainly can change the world to be a better place for all of us. Don't you agree? So let's do it. Thank you.
Gracias, hermana. Thank you so much. What an honor to listen to you, Sister Norma. Sometimes, maybe you didn't feel this way, sometimes when we talk about the border where Sister Norma works, it feels kind of far away. We're in Missouri. We're in the middle of the country, right? Really far from the beaches, kind of far from the mountains. Sometimes it's a bummer. So how does this, like, sometimes people be like, how does this impact me? Well, I think you even heard Sister Norma say migrants frequently don't just stop at our borders, right? In fact, many come to St. Louis. And with what I just said about St. Louis, are you thinking like, why? maybe you've thought that. Why do people come to St. Louis? This is one of my favorite questions to ask people. Why do you come? Why do you stay? People come to St. Louis for the same reason that you probably are here, right? That I'm here. Opportunities are here. My friends are here. Their families are here. And St. Louis becomes home all of a sudden. And it is home to many immigrant communities. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to offer you an opportunity to hear a little bit more about advancing the dignity of the human person in our own community with people who are our neighbors, our community members. I'm thinking a little bit more too about how the current events and policies that we have all been hearing about quite a bit in the news, maybe on the daily, are really impacting people that are our community members. Like I said, people that we care about. We have several organizations and agencies that are going to be around the room. Sister talked about going to the peripheries. When we're finished, we are going to literally ask you to go to the peripheries. And she talked about making connections because the people that are on these peripheries are going to also be facilitators of making those connections. But before we do that, we do have two representatives from agencies that are going to describe the local need now. As a reminder, before I introduce them, we are going to, at the end of this session, we're going to take your questions. And so you have those cards on your tables. So make sure that you're filling those out, and online, you're welcome to submit questions. You're going to see some, what Jeff lovingly referred to as basket cases. You're not a basket case, are you? Coming around and collecting those as we go. And if you want to just kind of signal them, please feel free to do that. But before we're going to move on to question and answer, we have a lot more to hear. And so it is my pleasure to introduce two women who are immigration attorneys here in the St. Louis area. They're also individuals that I'm really fortunate enough to call former colleagues and even friends. It was my great fortune to work alongside them for many years, and what they bring to our community is invaluable. They're probably both running on about like 4 hours of sleep over the past like several months, so I'm really grateful that they've agreed to come. Please join me in welcoming Jessica Mayo from the MICA Project and Christine Walintik from St. Francis Community Services CLAM, who are going to provide some local, some updates on our local landscape.
Sorry, I'm turning it on. Should I keep it on? Is that okay? Sorry. Okay, technology. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for having us tonight. We just kind of want to paint the picture of what happens once people are here and what we're seeing now in our climate. And as Sister Norma said, it's a lot of fear. It's a lot of unknown, chaos, uncertainty that we're seeing. We know that enforcement is up. More and more people are afraid of being detained. We're seeing a state that has made the agreement to train our state police to become ICE agents, essentially, and they can ask about ICE, their immigration status, if they're pulling someone over. We're seeing more and more arrests with the St. Louis police had always said that they were not going to ask about immigration status, the St. Louis City Police, and now with the change of the state taking over that police force, that's not the case anymore. So we don't know where people are safe. We don't know what's going to happen day to day. We are seeing people who have thought that they had protection. They were here, they asked to come in, they were given permission, or what we call parole. Parole is not a criminal term in immigration. It's just a permission to enter the United States. And we're seeing that uncertainty now. That's being taken away. They're getting emails that just say, you have to leave because we're taking away your parole. That was supposed to be for a year or two. And now they're just told to go home. And many of these people, as Sister Norma talked about, fled their countries because of the violence. They're seeking asylum. They have filed for asylum. They have the right to stay, but they don't understand that. They have the fear and they have the opinion that they must leave. And so some people are leaving. They're asking, what should we do? We're getting those calls every day. Is this real? Do I have to go now? What do I do? I can't go back to my home country. And we're seeing that over and over, I think. That's probably one of the biggest things I'm doing nowadays, is trying to help people alleviate that fear.
And for some people, it's not just fear, it's to the point where they no longer feel like the United States is a safe place. We have people who have come here to escape harm in their country of origin. And I have one client that has told me, I don't want to continue pursuing my asylum case. I would rather go back and choose when I go back than have to risk being detained and possibly being separated from my children. One of the things that is really kind of scary about all of the changes that we're seeing is that they're being done mostly within our existing legal system. Trump is not actually changing the laws in most cases. He's changing the way they're enforced. Of course, he's pushing the limits, and there are the courts, there's lots of litigation and people who are going to decide whether all of these things are actually legal or not. But one of the main things he's done is to say that there is basically no discretion on behalf of ICE, or who are usually the immigration police or the immigration prosecutors. In the past, they had the option of saying, you are not a priority. You maybe have US citizen family members or children. You might have a pending application. And for that reason, we're not going to prioritize your case right now, and you can stay. Right now, there's basically no discretion and everyone is a priority. So I have one client that I've been working with for probably 10 years now. He is stateless. There's no country they can send him to. But when we went for his annual check-in last month, they came out planning to detain him. We were able to avoid that because he was suffering from an acute medical issue at the time that they didn't want to deal with in the detention center. But they have nowhere to send him. They might try to send him to a third country or just keep him detained somewhat indefinitely, just for the purpose of scaring other immigrants, of showing the American public that they're being tough on immigrants. It's all kind of part of this culture of fear. This client also has a US citizen wife and children. So that's, a lot of people don't realize that you can have a lot of community ties and still be in an immigration situation where there's no clear path to get permanent legal status in the United States. You've probably mostly also heard that Trump instituted a refugee ban. This is also being litigated in the courts. But St. Louis is really known for its refugee population, for the huge number of Bosnians who have moved to this country, for all of the people resettled by the International Institute. And along with cutting off refugees, they've cut off funding, both to places like the International Institute, who get funding for refugees when they're actually coming into the United States, and also for agencies like ours that work with unaccompanied children or with the folks who were evacuated from Afghanistan and entered the United States with parole. All of these funding streams are being cut off in an attempt to squeeze the ability of this community to receive assistance. There are no public defenders in immigration court. So these funding streams were these like narrow little bands of assistance where people were actually able to find an attorney.
So I think now, as Sister Norma said, how do you get involved? How can you be a part of this? How can you meet the immigrant community here in St. Louis? Some people don't know there's 4% of our state are immigrants. We're not a very big community compared to other states, but we are present, and we have many service providers, as here tonight, that are doing much good needed work. So one of the things we've really been doing in the last 3 months has been Know Your Rights presentations and power of attorney workshops. We've been presenting around to the different various immigrant communities and just letting them know, here are your rights as an immigrant, regardless of status, you have rights. What are things you can do to plan? Because a lot of it's unknown. We don't know what's going to happen, but what can they do? So we've done since January 1st, we have done 15 Know Your Rights presentations in the community, reaching over 1,000 people. We've also then followed those up with power of attorney workshops. These are workshops to allow families to plan. What are they going to happen if they are picked up one day or they are deported? What's going to happen to their children? Many of their children are US citizens. They don't have to go back. They are not being deported. Those families may choose to do that, but what's the plan? And if one day they can't pick their child up from school? or what's going to happen to their bank accounts or their homes or their cars or all their connections or financial connections to the United States. So this is an opportunity for lawyers and interpreters to meet with a family one-on-one and can prepare these documents. And we've done 9 of these since January, and we've reached over 400 families. So 400 families have at least something in mind and have thought about it. It's heartbreaking that they have to make this decision, but they at least feel like they have some sort of protection. Also, we have the IFER fund. It's the Immigrant Family Emergency Response Fund. This is a fund that started in 2020 with COVID, and it restarted a couple months ago, where this helps families of immigrant families with some financial support when they are being affected by some of these policy changes. There were 966 applications in a 2-week period from 10 countries, 91 unique zip codes in Missouri and Illinois, and they were able to give out funding to 200 families. So only 200 people out of those 966. Hopefully we'll see more funding, but that is something that we're working on as well. And then an accompaniment. If you want to talk to these immigrants, walk with them. There's an accompaniment program with the Immigrant and Refugee Ministry. They have a table where you can go and witness their experience. They can go to immigration with them. You can go to a check-in at ICE or to their program, intensive supervision program, where they have to check in regularly and just be there with them. Show them that support, talk to them, hear their story, help them just be present.
And that is really helpful. I've spent a lot of time in the ICE office this week. And
Yes.
the people in the ICE office are not kind to the people visiting. And so your presence there as a supportive and kind person is really helpful. A lot of people go to these check-ins with a lot of fear, and knowing that there's someone there with them is really helpful. We soon after Inauguration Day formed a coalition of different groups in St. Louis, formed the Rapid Response Coalition. We currently have a hotline that people can call if they see enforcement activity or if someone they know is in the process of being detained or has been detained. There are several different roles and you can get involved in this. I think Ashray back in that corner has information about trainings for the Rapid Response Coalition. We have someone on call from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in case someone calls to provide immediate assistance. Sometimes that's reminding someone of their rights. If there's actual enforcement action happening, we have scripts. You don't have to know exactly what to say. And sometimes it's helping someone find a loved one. Sometimes we get calls a day or two after, or even 2 weeks after someone was taken and the family still doesn't know where they are because they're afraid to reach out anywhere else. They're afraid that they will also then be arrested. So helping people figure out where their family member has been detained. And then we also have attorneys who call and do intakes either with the detained individual or with their family members to determine what sort of legal options they might have. There is also a group that does ICE enforcement verification. So if there is a reported ICE sighting out in the community and we're told it's happening right at that time, there's a group of people who are trained to go out and see if they're able to verify that it really is ICE so that we can avoid spreading rumors and furthering that atmosphere of fear.
I'm gonna say, unfortunately, and many times with immigration, when someone's detained, there are not magical ways to have people stay here in this country. There are limited pathways to stay, but having someone who can orient them and let them make the decision of whether or not they want to, they choose to leave, they want to fight their case, or they at least know what's available to them.
And then I also wanted to mention the Missouri Immigration Policy Coalition, which is over on that side of the room. They have been doing legislative advocacy in Jefferson City to try and stop some of the really bad bills that were being proposed this year, like the bounty hunter bill that would have given people money to turn in an immigrant. So they've done some amazing organizing and advocacy and lobbying around that. So that's a great way to plug in. I know a lot of people don't like like to call or email their elected officials, but there is so much information out there now about how to do it. If you're afraid to do it, you can call after hours and then you get to leave a voicemail. But it is a really important way for us to be making our voices heard during this time. And there are a lot of other agencies here that are really great. One of the great things about St. Louis is that we are really all collaborating on a lot of things. We've both collaborated a lot with the International Institute and with Monarch. I used to volunteer with iHelp. I'm sure I'm forgetting and both Welcome Neighbor. We've certainly done lots with them as well. I'm sure I'm forgetting one agency and I don't mean to, but there are a lot of really great places in this room where you can get involved and we're all interconnected and doing the work together. So we would love to have you join us. That's it. Thank you.
Speaking of who's in the room, some of you may have seen this at your table. Don't forget to flip it over because that's going to tell you where to find each organization once we get to that part of the evening. It is a part of the evening. It's not optional, you all. Just like you weren't just going to sit for Sister Norma and then leave, or just come in and hear Chris and Jessica and then leave. No, you were going to stay for the whole thing, right? That part is part of our evening. So just a little friendly reminder that's part of our evening. But before that, do we have a microphone at the back at the table? Great. So I'm going to turn it over to Johnny. And ladies, if you'd like to stay right there, if you could turn on if you don't have your microphone packs on, if you could turn those on, and then I'll ask Johnny to ask the questions from the back.
Okay, so our first question, and I believe that this was directed specifically to Sister Norma. What would you say if... All right. What would you say if you could speak directly to the current U.S. administration?
Oh. What would I say? Come and see the faces of the children and the families. Get to know them. I think that when you actually see that face, something happens to us. It changes us, transforms us, It brings out that part that God is still there. That light of God, I'm hopeful is still there, that will save them and change and care. I think that I've always invited the presidents to come and anyone and everyone. You need to come and see. I think that's so important because it is what that girl, that lady that came to see, she was changed because she saw. We must invite everybody to your congressmen, your leaders. Introduce them to a family here from St. Louis. They need to see. Otherwise, their heart is going to stay hardened. God is the one that is doing everything, so we must trust that.
Thank you. The next set of questions had to deal with why do we not talk about more the conditions of the countries that the migrants are coming from so that they do not have to flee their homes?
It is true that, I don't know if you want to answer that as well, but it's true that unfortunately we're not focused on finding solutions to the reality of why these families are coming. Because if we did, we would focus on that, on the root causes of what is happening in their country, so they don't have to come. Because I don't think that if most of those families would prefer to stay home, but it's not safe. But unfortunately, our leaders are not looking for those solutions. They're looking to win elections.
Thank you. We got a few questions that revolved around the impact on immigration regarding the cartels and the drug trade. So I'm going to try to combine this. Is how prevalent are the cartels or the drug trade as a factor in immigration? And the second part of this is what do you say to people who kind of conflate immigrants as the source or the cause of drugs and violence in the United States.
Unfortunately, every problem that the United States is blamed on the immigrants, and it's not true. Drugs are not brought in by immigrants. The cartels and those that do those things have their ways of importing drugs into this country, and it's not the immigrant families and the children and all of them. It's very sophisticated, and the port of entry customs, they know how to address that, and they are addressing it because it is a big problem in the United States, but it's not the immigrants that are doing it.
Thank you. Okay, this next
You have
one.
something to say?
I was just gonna say, I think that a lot of the reason that people are coming to the United States are because of cartels, because of gangs. There's a lot of gang violence, and that's one of the most common reasons we hear of why people are seeking asylum. And unfortunately, our asylum laws don't allow for most cases like that to win. In our asylum cases, you have to show that it's not generalized violence. And our courts have found that that is being recruited by a gang as a child or being extorted by a gang, that those are just happen to everybody in the country. So it's not a reason.
I think it's also important to note that the gangs largely began and came about because of some of the ways that the US was interfering in all of these countries. And so that piece of that history is also really important.
Again, this question is for all of you. How do you find balance between the administrative work that you need to do and the ministry of being with people? And also, how would you define a savior complex, and how do you avoid that in your ministry? And how do you feel when you're out there working with people and then you find people who are not willing to help you? And each one of you could take. Go.
Big question.
I think you just named off like all of the core difficulties of this work. I don't have a solution to the administrative issue. I would love to hear if you do, sister. I do whatever is most pressing that day, and that often means I'm very slow at returning emails, as many of you probably know. The savior complex is something that I have thought a lot about and that we talk a lot about in our office. I helped found the MICA project, and one of the things that we really talked about when we founded it was that we wanted to work with people, that we don't want to be talking about ourselves as serving people or as doing things for people, but that we're working together with them to walk through this process. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, a lot of the problems that they're going through, both in their home country and here as they're attempting to get through their immigration case, were basically created by us. It is the immigration system that is creating all of these barriers for them. So as we're working with them, I sort of feel it is an obligation for me to be working with them to go through this process and get past these barriers that we have effectively created. So in that way, I don't see it as saving anyone. I see it more as trying to sort of do some recompense for what our society and nation has done. I don't think that means that I have completely overcome the issue of a savior complex. It's something I continue to work on, but that's sort of my approach to it.
I would agree that I think at this point, we're just putting out fires. And so whatever comes my way is what my first priority is. And so sometimes I'm working with the same client all week and not working with the other clients I have, which is a big struggle of who to prioritize. And just because somebody calls me more often means they get my help and the other person doesn't. So that's a struggle I try to, haven't found a solution for as well. I agree with Jessica. I think just remembering that it's their case, it's their story that they have to tell. All I'm there to do is help them tell it, and trying to remember that as much as possible. Like, we do have the education, I have the legal degree that allows me to do some of this work, but just to remember that that's paper, technicality, and that it's their story and that we want to just walk with them on it.
I think that when I go to sleep at night, I rest and I start the next day refreshed, you know? And so it is important that we do remember that it is not I, Norma, that is doing this, you know? It is God that is leading me to do what I need to do. It's his work, it's his mission, it's his what he wants us to accomplish. And we make sure that that is in place and we make sure that we don't get in the way. There's no savior complex here, okay? This is all about God, okay? And if we have that very clear, we won't get that confused, you know? And so I love people and I enjoy and they energize me and they fill me up. And so the time that I spend with them, the time that I'm able to be successful in making a difference in their life to make them be okay, that energizes me. That gives me life. That gives me like, Norma, let's go for it. You know, we're doing it again. That's what gives, it doesn't tire us, but rather refills us, you know, because we know we're doing the right thing and we're doing good to someone that needs it.
So this next question is kind of a two-parter. And so I'm going to ask first, especially for y'all in terms of advocacy work, several people have asked that, or have said that they're going to talk to their legislators, whether at the state level or at the federal government level. What should they say to their legislators about immigration?
You should go talk to Gabby about Missouri. She will tell you a lot of different things that you can say for the Missouri level. She's at the MIPC table over there. They also have action alerts on their website.
I think they want to hear stories if you have encounters, they want to hear it individualized. They don't want the same message from 100 different people. They want to hear how it's affecting you, what you believe. And it's really important if you have a story, if you've had an experience, to share that. If you don't, you can still relate to if you're a parent, you can relate to that. If you have a friend that you know of and you've worked with that friend, whatever it be, try to make that personal connection.
I agree. I think that the personal story will help them see the picture better than if you just label all these things for them. But if you want something specific, just definitely go to somebody and they'll tell you exactly what to say. But when we connect with others to help them see the difference, it matters a lot that you share that story, because that's how you will touch their hearts and you will help them feel and understand that they have a responsibility to do something good. You know, it's amazing how many people don't realize that they have given permission to do good. You know, this is what this is about. And sometimes I don't even realize that.
As a follow-up to that, a lot of people are asking for you to tell them one single action that they can hone in on that would be most impactful. So I'm just wondering if maybe each of you could just ask for one thing. If people could do anything, what would you have them do? Donate, volunteer, visit their legislators? What would be the one thing you would want people to really hone in on? And maybe each of you could take one thing.
I mean, I think donating is probably for everybody something really important, but I would say also for tonight, something you learned tonight or something that impacted you tonight, share that with other people. I think education, because the number of people I've met who just have a blanket opinion about immigration without any experience, and then you talk to them and make them hear the story, that can change hearts and minds. And that's what I think we need to do.
I don't think I can say one thing, but we did create a guide. We have a little half sheet back at the MICA project table. And it's really designed to help you hone in on what is it that you are called to do. It has some different, it has some of that history of the US interference, and also it goes through acknowledging your own privilege, various different things. And then it moves on into different actions you can take. So if everyone in this room did the same thing, it wouldn't make nearly as big of a difference as if everyone takes the time to figure out where they can plug in and make the biggest difference.
There is a list of so many things, and you've heard it tonight, that you can do. but you're not gonna do it if you don't do one thing. I invite you to spend time before the Blessed Sacrament in silence and adoration, and God will tell you what to do.
Thank you. This next set of questions have to deal with migrants and immigrants. What is the most important action that we could do to help them in St. Louis? And if we see an ICE agent take someone from their homes, how can we help them? What should we be doing? And are there detention centers in Missouri where they would take them?
To answer the last question first, that yes. As of beginning of January, we did not have any detention centers in Missouri. We now have 3 in St. Genevieve, Greene County, and Phelps County. Oh, we may be having another one. I haven't heard yet, but it's possible.
How many people are there?
There are 350 beds available and more than 200 of them were filled in Greene County, which is Springfield. The other 2 are much smaller, but I'm not sure the number of beds. The other one has like 300 beds total, but that's for both the criminal and immigrants combined. If you see ICE taking action against doing an enforcement action, if it hasn't, so one person asked me, oh, I'm having work done on my house, and the crews are often Latino, like what if ICE pulls up? What would I do? My suggestion was that they could go out and be like, you're on my property. I don't want you on my property. Do you have a warrant? They could also just sort of, you can play confused. I mean, if you are a US citizen, if you have other privileges such as being white or otherwise not having fear of ICE, you can kind of stay in their way for a while. You can also try to tell the people around you, you have the right to remain silent. Unless there's a warrant, you don't have to go with them or speak or share anything. Some of those basic know your rights things can be really helpful to share with people if something hasn't actually happened yet. Also, if you are actually interfering with a law enforcement action, you could be arrested. So I'm not encouraging that, just that you do have some ability to go up and just interact with them and see what's going on and maybe try to delay. If you have seen ICE take someone or think that you see, a bigger action happening and you are not in a place where you can interfere, because you're probably not going to be able to shut down the whole operation, right? You can call the emergency response hotline. I don't have the number on me, but if you visit me back at that table, or if you go to the MICA Project social media, it's on there. And that is one of the purposes of that hotline, is that you can make that report and we can send out verifiers and try to get more information.
Okay, I think this is our last question. We must have some folks here who work with high school students. They want to know, how would you suggest broaching the topic of immigration with high school students and getting them more involved with immigrant communities in the city here or wherever they may live?
Well, back home, I invite the high schools to come over and spend time with and teach English classes to this, to the adults or to the children, and just spend some time with them and play. And so if that's an opportunity, they have them here, invite them to have spaces where immigrants can gather and they can be present to them and interchange with them, so they can share their kindness and their time with them, and make them, show them that they matter, that you're present with them. I think that's very important, encourage them to get involved. I think our youth want to, what I see in youth is a response that they care about how people are mistreated, and that we must do something about it. It's amazing what I've seen when I speak at high schools and junior highs. The kids have amazing responses of why we are not doing more to protect them, and save them.
We want to thank you. We try to combine as many questions as we could. So we hope that we got the essence of all of the questions that were submitted. We do want to thank you for the questions, and we will turn them over so that the speakers could see if there's any others they want to answer later on. Thank you.
Will you join me in thanking our guests tonight? Yeah. I'm going to invite Pat up to send you out, and then Father Jack is going to round out this part of the evening with a prayer. Pat.
Well, we sure have been in the presence of the Holy Spirit today. I don't know any better way for us to proceed into the next day, but with what we've heard and our hearts have heard. And Sister, I have to say one thing. You had mentioned a couple things. When you see the face, if I could have 30 seconds for a quick story, I know anybody who knows me, that's not going to happen. I had an opportunity to be in Tucson once, and part of the program enabled us to go across the border, and they took us to a shelter literally right on the border. And several people felt like they could share part of their story. And the story of this one particular man said that he had been working his way to get into the United States to get money to send back home. He was robbed, and he was there at the shelter right at the border. He said he could not go back home without money because of what they would do to his family, because of the money that he borrowed. And then he said, and I can't get back for my girl's birthday, which was the 26th of June. My youngest daughter is the 26th of June. And when you see the face and when you hear that, and when your heart is moved, that's what you have done tonight with us. You have touched our hearts. Thank you. This has been a wow evening. Again, Katie and Jessica, thank you so much. Katrina and Jessica, thank you so much. And our wonderful MC this evening. From now on, you're doing all of the programs. You're just great this evening. We are to, in a moment, have an opportunity to engage with the folks at the tables to have, maybe there's something that speaks to you tonight at working with the folks at one of these tables. Maybe that's your volunteer opportunity. Maybe that's where your heart is moved tonight. And we invite you, please don't just take a hike, but take an opportunity to, as you said, visit the peripheries. And I thank you so much for all of the volunteers this evening. I want to give them a hand. You don't know half of them because they're in all different kinds of places. I think between the board member volunteers and our community volunteers, we had almost 30 people tonight come to try and help make this an awesome evening for you. My next job is to introduce one of my best friends in the whole world, sincerely, and who actually was one of the 3 amigos that started the Seeds of Justice Network to send us out in prayer. Please welcome Father Jack Schuler.
After Sister talked to the students here at SLU this morning, I had the great opportunity to spend the rest of the day with her. And she smells like the sheep, and she didn't even take off her shoes. This is not a closing prayer, but a sending prayer back to those engagement tables. This is the Jubilee year of hope, God of life, creating us the heart of a pilgrim. There's a part in most of us that fights letting go. Do not allow us to become so rooted or so accustomed to our daily tasks and inner securities that we miss your voice, calling us to reach out and be pilgrims of hope. Too often, we want to hoard our blessings, to hang on to our gifts, to hide our talents and the blessings of our lives. We want to take them out one by one, only when we know that it's safe, we won't get hurt or emptied. Stir a fire in us such a great love for you and your people that will constantly stand with those on the margins of society. Allow us to see visions and dream dreams so that we can live with your vision and not be overwhelmed by the struggles of the journey. God of the Exodus, we know that you are near. Grant us the courage to leave our comfort zone and be pilgrims of hope through Christ our Lord. I coached high school soccer, and the other coach had a saying. He said, "Don't say you're going to do it, do it. Go back to those tables."